Welcome to this lecture on multivariate analysis. Today we are going to explore one of the most important structures in statistics, the variance-covariance matrix. If you have ever wondered how data scientists understand the complex, hidden relationships between dozens of variables all at once, this is their secret weapon. We will build this concept from the ground up, so do not worry if it sounds intimidating right now. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what this matrix is, how to calculate it, and why it is the beating heart of multivariate statistics. Let us dive right in. To understand this matrix, let us imagine you are managing a busy restaurant kitchen with two chefs. Sometimes the grill cook works faster than usual, and sometimes slower. This individual fluctuation in speed is what we call variance. Now, consider how their speeds relate to each other. If a huge bus of hungry tourists arrives, both cooks will suddenly work much faster at the exact same time. This tendency for two different things to change together in the same direction or in opposite directions is called covariance. In statistics, when we study many variables at once, like height, weight, and age, we need a neat way to organize all these individual variances and their pairwise covariances. Now that we understand what variance and covariance are, let us look at how we organize them. We put all these numbers into a square grid, which we call the variance-covariance matrix. A matrix is simply a mathematical table with rows and columns used to store data systematically. In this specific matrix, the main diagonal, which is the line of numbers running from the top left corner to the bottom right corner, contains the variance of each individual variable. Every other position in the grid, called the off-diagonal elements, contains the covariance between two different variables. If we have a data set with a certain number of variables, let us call that number P, our matrix will have P rows and P columns. This structure leads us to the theoretical formula for the true population variance-covariance matrix. The Greek letter sigma represents this true population matrix. The symbol E stands for the expected value, which is a mathematical way of calculating the long-term average. The variable S is a random vector containing all our variables, and the Greek letter mu is the vector containing the true population averages for those variables. The superscript T stands for transpose, which is an operation that flips a column of numbers into a row of numbers. By multiplying the difference between the data and the mean by its own transpose, we create a full grid of all possible variance and covariance combinations. As the physical spread of the data increases, the numbers inside sigma will grow larger. While the population formula is elegant, it brings us to a practical problem. In real life, we almost never have data for the entire population, so we cannot calculate the exact population matrix. Instead, we take a smaller group, called a sample, and estimate the matrix using our sample data. This estimated grid is called the sample covariance matrix. To calculate it, we look at how far each individual data point is from the sample average. A crucial detail here is that we divide our final sum by the number of observations minus 1. We subtract 1 because of a concept called degrees of freedom, which corrects a slight mathematical bias. This makes our sample matrix an unbiased estimator, meaning it does not systematically underestimate or overestimate the true population matrix. Now, let us look at the mathematical form of this sample estimate. Here, S represents the sample covariance matrix, which is our best estimate of the true population matrix. The symbol N is the total number of observations or data points in our sample. The term X sub I represents the specific values for the ith observation, and X bar is the sample mean vector containing the averages of our sample data. The summation symbol tells us to add up the results of the multiplication for every single observation, from the first to the last. Dividing by n-1 ensures that our estimate is unbiased. If we increase our sample size n, our estimate S becomes much more stable and closer to the true population matrix sigma. Before we calculate this matrix with real numbers, we must understand two critical mathematical properties it possesses. First, just like the variance of a single variable follows a chi-square distribution, the sample covariance matrix follows a Wishart distribution. This is simply the multidimensional big brother of the chi-square distribution, and it allows statisticians to perform hypothesis tests to see if relationships are statistically significant. Second, the sample covariance matrix is positive definite as long as the sample size n is greater than or equal to the number of variables p. In plain English, positive definite means that no matter how we combine our variables, the total variance of that new combination will always be a positive number greater than 0. This makes perfect physical sense because a spread cannot be negative. Let us see this with a concrete example. Suppose we have data for 3 students, measuring 2 variables, study hours and test score. Student 1 studied for 2 hours and scored 50. Student 2 studied for 4 hours and scored 70. Student 3 studied for 6 hours and scored 90. We need to calculate the sample covariance matrix for this data set. Our approach will be to follow the formula step by step. First, we will find the average for both study hours and test scores. We add up all the study hours and divide by 3 to get an average of 4 hours. We add up all the test scores and divide by 3 to get an average score of 70. This vector serves as the center point of our data set. Continuing with our calculation, we now calculate how far each student's data is from those averages. For the first student, we subtract the average study hours from their actual study hours and the average score from their actual score. The negative numbers tell us that this student studied less than average and scored lower than average. Next, we multiply the first student's deviation vector by its transpose. This creates a mini matrix just for the first student. The top left number is the squared deviation for hours, the bottom right is the squared deviation for scores, and the off diagonals represent the cross product of hours and scores. We are building the pieces of our final matrix one student at a time. Finally, we repeat the deviation and multiplication process for the second and third students, and then add all 3 mini matrices together. The second student was exactly at the average, so their matrix is all zeros. The third student was above average, yielding the same positive squared values as the first student. We add these up to get the total sum of squares and cross products. To finish, we divide the total sum matrix by n-1, which in this case is 3-1, or 2. The resulting matrix is our sample covariance matrix. The top left value of 4 is the variance of study hours. The bottom right value of 400 is the variance of test scores. The off-diagonal value of 40 is the covariance, and being positive, it confirms that as study hours increase, test scores also tend to increase. We just found a covariance of 40, which brings us to an important question. Is 40 a strong relationship or a weak one? While covariance tells us the direction of a relationship, its actual numerical value can be huge or tiny depending on the units we use, like measuring in millimeters versus kilometers. To fix this scaling issue, we standardize the covariance matrix to create a correlation matrix. The correlation matrix mathematically forces all the relationship values to sit strictly between -1 and +1. This makes it incredibly easy to interpret the strength of the relationship at a glance, regardless of the original units of measurement used in the raw data. To achieve this standardization, we can easily convert any covariance value into a correlation value using a simple formula. In this conversion formula, R sub ij represents the correlation between variable I and variable j. The term S sub ij is the covariance between those two variables, taken directly from the off-diagonal of our sample covariance matrix. The terms S sub ii and S sub jj are the individual variances of variable I and variable j, taken from the main diagonal of the matrix. By dividing the covariance by the square root of the product of the variances, we strip away the units. As the covariance increases towards the maximum possible spread, the correlation approaches +1. Let us apply this formula to the sample covariance matrix we just calculated and find the exact correlation between study hours and test scores. We know the covariance is 40, but it is hard to tell if 40 represents a strong or weak relationship just by looking at it. Our strategy is to use the correlation formula. We will take the covariance from the off-diagonal of our matrix and divide it by the square root of the product of the two individual variances from the main diagonal. We substitute our known values into the formula. The numerator is 40. In the denominator, we multiply the variance of study hours, which is 4, by the variance of test scores, which is 400. Continuing the calculation, we prepare to take the square root of that product in the denominator. We calculate the product inside the square root to get 1600. The square root of 1600 is exactly 40. Dividing the numerator of 40 by the denominator of 40 gives us exactly 1. A correlation of 1 means there is a perfect positive linear relationship between study hours and test scores in our sample. Every single increase in study hours perfectly predicts the increase in test scores. By stripping away the units of hours and points, we revealed a perfect underlying relationship. To truly grasp what a positive covariance and a perfect correlation look like, let us look at this diagram. You are seeing a scatter plot with variable 1 on the horizontal axis and variable 2 on the vertical axis. Notice the tight cluster of data points forming a clear upward trend from the bottom left to the top right. The black arrow cutting through the center of the points represents the positive covariance we just calculated. As you move to the right along the horizontal axis, meaning variable 1 increases, the points consistently move higher on the vertical axis, meaning variable 2 increases. The bell curves on the axes show the individual variances, but the upward slope shows how they move together. Now that we have visualized it, you might wonder where this is used. The variance-covariance matrix is absolutely essential in the real world, particularly in fields like finance and machine learning. In finance, investors use this matrix to build portfolios. By choosing stocks that have negative covariance, they ensure that if one stock crashes, another rises, thereby minimizing total risk. In machine learning, algorithms like principal component analysis rely entirely on the covariance matrix to find hidden patterns and compress images. Without this matrix, we would only be able to look at variables in isolation, completely missing the complex, interconnected relationships that drive real-world systems. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, the variance-covariance matrix is a mathematical grid that organizes the spread of individual variables and the relationships between them. Second, remember the structure. The main diagonal shows how much each variable varies on its own, while the off-diagonals show how variables move together. Finally, by calculating the sample covariance matrix and ensuring it is unbiased by dividing by n-1, we gain a powerful tool for understanding complex, multidimensional data. You now understand the foundational building block for almost all advanced multivariate statistical techniques. Great job!